So many rules in 40K, hundreds of events, and constant updates. Skip the learning curve of Warhammer and join the pros. Art of War is led by multiple world champions with decades of success. We teach clinics, stream games, and inspire you to succeed at your favorite hobby. Join our global community of gamers just like you.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Art of War tier list. We're excited to be here. The meta has dramatically changed over the past couple weeks with that balanced data slate and a bunch of new books. So we're super excited to talk about the meta. And frankly, the balanced data slate was needed. Much needed.
It really was. And you know, it came just in time. It's a Tuesday today. And you know what we do on Tuesdays?
Tier List Tuesday, baby.
Tier List Tuesdays.
So I am hyped for this. We did one a little while ago around the time of chapter approved, but we felt because the meta has changed so dramatically that it's worth looking at it, because I think this list is going to look very different from the one last
I don't think the meta has ever shifted this dramatically that I can remember.
Yeah, it's because it shifted not only some of the top armies down, it introduced some new armies. You'll see where we put them.
Oh yeah,
and then those middle tier factions like the Sister Space Marines, Thousand Suns, dramatically improved.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the meta right now. It's legitimately hard to pick. I still don't know what army I'm playing to Dallas yet.
Jack is basically he's told me he's rolling a die today.
What's gonna end up?
I don't know if that's a D20 or what.
It might be a D100, you know.
It might be. It's all different. Every different Tausept.
That's right. But let's oh jeez. All right, let's lead us off. So the kings of the old meta.
Well, let's just talk about our criteria, right?
Absolutely.
So biggest thing for us is if you want to look at a tier list that's just based on win rate, there's a lot of different places to look for that. And while win rate is a important statistic, it is not the only one that we judge a faction by. I
actually don't particularly care what the win rate of a faction is. Generally, it will correspond with how good a faction is, so it doesn't matter. But there are some times when a faction has a dramatically lower win rate than I feel like it should have in good hands, or a dramatically higher win rate than I think it would have against better opponents. And when those are at a mismatch, I tend to favor, well, what would happen if one of us took it to an event? You know.
Yep. So we are going to focus here on if you took this faction, put the best player on that faction on it, what's its skill cap? Yep. Where's it going to be versus other top players playing their best factions?
There are some armies, Sisters was a notable example, where they just had a lower win rate than they should have in skilled hands. And that's where we're going to put them. Where can they play? If you took the best player in the world on every one of these factions, how would they rank up?
Yep, and then we'll use things like win rate for context.
Yes, yes. Also, slow armies tend to overperform at mid-tables, whereas fast finesse armies tend to underperform.
Yep. Also, those janky mission-playing armies tend to overperform with top players, whereas I'm just going for raw damage that's going to succeed towards the mid-tables.
Absolutely. But before we start off, we got a $10 super chat from Dalton Peters saying, Deathwatch, baby. Don't worry, it's right there.
It is right there.
Right there.
Jack and I are both fans of the Deathwatch.
Yeah.
We love some janky Space Marines.
I'm going to be playing them later today.
Yep. I like how we like the same Space Marine chapters, basically.
Grey Knights,
Deathwatch,
Blood Angels.
I mean, fist bump.
Hell yeah.
Let's go. All right. So let's get into this. First one is Drukhari. Drukhari sat in S tier for a long time last year. Pretty much the entire year into early last year, where we dropped them down to A after the Coven nerfs.
Yes. They have received multiple nerfs. Just nerfs, you know? When they came out, they were super busted. They had liquefier spam would just run you off the table.
Yeah, I'm going to send this boat like 30 inches across the board and just kill you.
Yep.
Then I'm going to fire and fade back.
Then I'm going to fire and fade. You kill the boat. They emergency disembark behind a wall, hop in a new boat the next turn, and continue shredding you. And they're also 60 points.
Yep.
So they were pretty mega busted when they came out. They've gotten balanced multiple times. Eventually it stuck.
Yep, they got some points increases because they used to just have more units than you.
Yeah.
They would just send units. They'd have a million incubi coming at our raiders. They had tons of raiders. You just couldn't deal with all of it quick enough. And those last couple characters with their remaining combat units would just finish you off.
Yeah. We would talk multiple times when they first came out about Drukhari just having an I win button, which the opponent can just choose to press at any point, and then that's them just running at you.
Yep. We played a 1,700 point Drukhari list on stream against 2,000 points of Ultramarines, and the Drukhari easily won.
Easily. Ran them over.
So the army was beyond busted. Like I said, points increases, and then they got nerfs to the Coven units, such as the -1 damage not working against Strength 8 or higher, and there's a lot of Strength 8 or higher. So I think Drukhari is in a very good spot. I still think they're a strong army. They have a couple things that are, compared to the other factions of the game, are undercosted. Things like Hellions, Listen Urgles.
Yeah, those units have suffered quite a bit from Armor of Contempt. They will now bounce.
Yep.
Incubi are still good. The characters are still murderers.
They're still amazing, yep.
And they have the speed. If you have speed, you are at least this good.
And rack units are still good.
They're still good. They're still cost effective. When people are building to take on Armor of Contempt, they be 4 and 4+ sometimes. Racks will just slip in there and be like, "Hey, guess what? I don't have one of those." So I would say it's somewhere between A and B, I would say.
In my opinion, Drukhari are the poster boys of an A-tier army. They have tools, they have, you can get a lot out of this, but at the same time, they don't have anything broken about them anymore, I don't believe. The Succubus still is quite silly, but that's not enough to carry an entire faction into S tier.
Yeah, the best combat characters, for sure.
Yeah.
But characters can't really...
Especially because they don't also have guns. They are one phase, but they have very good tricks.
Really good at that phase. They're really good at movement, too.
I believe they are the poster child of A.
I definitely don't think they're going to end up at top of A. If we're ranking in the tier, which I don't even know if there's a point to that.
We'll come back and talk about it.
But I think they're quite good right now.
Yeah, they're still very good in skilled hands. If you underestimate them, Advance and Charge army-wide is just an amazing ability. Yeah. Turn 2, it's popped, then you get +1 to hit. It's all good. So they lack in shooting, and that can hurt them on lighter terrain boards.
Yes, against Tau, things like that.
Exactly.
Even some Marines.
But on things like Games Workshop format, I still think they are an excellent faction.
Absolutely.
Great secondary play, great mission play.
I think they're really good.
All right, let's head over to a faction that you played quite a bit, Mr. Jack.
I did.
Custodes.
I played 25 practice games, 30 practice games in the 2 weeks before LVO with Custodes, because I was the one in charge of refining our list. And pretty quickly I determined they were busted. So I started playing it, and this was back when Drukhari were really good. This was Thick City. This wasn't like the best Drukhari had ever been, but it was Thick City. And I just shoved my chips into the center and just let's find out what happened. What happened was I beat Drukhari. Yep. And I was like, that seems strong.
I haven't seen this in a while.
Yeah, that was a new feeling. So they were really good. They were busted. They were the best army when they came out, and they were one of the best armies as subsequent books came out. Turns out they were the weakest in the series of about 4 books that came out afterwards. But they were still dominating the metagame. You could lose to even a bad player playing Custodes could just jam their army in the center, and you're just like, I can't deal with that.
Yep.
And then they kill you.
Turn off rerolls, transhuman, you're like, I just didn't do enough this turn, and just bam.
So Custodes flew a little too close to the sun.
They got those points decreases, which they didn't need.
Yes. They just went a little too close. Most of the good armies got slaps. Custodes got punched in the face. They did not get slapped. They
Direct
got punched.
hit.
Just bonk right on the chin. They dropped a whole couple tiers. So all their defensive strats went to A, infantry only, B, once a game.
That's a big deal.
And that is a huge deal.
Those would be popped twice a battle round.
Exactly.
Generally.
Yeah. Now you just can't rely on them. You have to try and pick the exact moment when it's going to mess your opponent up. But it's so much harder to do that because it was the weight of, you never get those rerolls. Exactly. But now you do most of the time. Yeah. And without no rerolls, Custodes actually aren't that durable. They're not. They're 2-up armor, 3 wounds apiece, 4-up invuln. That's not breaking any banks. It's when that unit has transhuman and turns off rerolls. It's when bikes turn off rerolls transhuman when you try and shoot at them with a 4-up invuln. That's when they get durable.
Yep.
But without it, they're not durable. if you've ever shot units or fought units after they've already popped their no rerolls anywhere else, they go down fast. There's no -1 damage. There's no other defensive mechanics in there. Mm-hmm. Also, a lot of their utility strats, like martial discretion, switching a kata, that went to once a game. Why? In addition, Esteemed Amalgam's Alpha of Emperors Chosen went to once a game as well. Again, why? Why are their toolbox strats going to 1 use per game? So they're not a toolbox anymore. I think you still have to run Emperor's Chosen because there's so many mortals in the game that if you have a 6-up, feel no pain against it, you're going to get tabled in a turn. As it is, with the amount of mortals armies can put out, I think you kind of get tabled in 2 to 3 turns. But it's not great. The damage output also, not that high. They did rely on just having your opponent bounce off you multiple turns in a row. So I do think they've dropped significantly. What do you think, Siegs?
So I also think, in addition to that, the bodyguard change. Custodians are one of the best abusers of bodyguard because they put the wardens behind a terrain piece within range of, say, Trajan or the Blade Champion, who's on the center objective and potential 6-inch heroic. That was just a nightmare for people to deal with. You had to send a combat unit in that could actually kill Trajan. Otherwise, if you didn't, he swings back, kills the unit. You don't get your stranglehold. You just knight. So not only did Trajan lose an OBSEC.
It's a huge deal, yeah.
Which is a massive deal, but also the bodyguard protection, where Custodians were able to force opponents to act. Now they just
get acted upon.
Exactly. So it's a big deal.
You move to the center, you take your opponent's best hits to the face, and you just hope that you can tank through it. And Michael Foster's like, not that durable. 10 pure strains with, I assume that's the +1 attack once a game, still only kill maybe 2? No, they kill more than that. They're through.
Not when you're rolling, baby.
Not when I'm rolling. No, with the +1 strength off of Twisted Helix and whatnot, they'll pick up like 4 to 5, and that's like 200 points, 250, because every model you remove is at least 50 points. So I think their play style has gotten completely undermined, and they don't have a second one.
I still think it's worth exploring something like Solar Watch and the infantry-heavy builds, where you really take advantage of the strats plus the OBSEC everywhere. Worth trying out. I think Custodians actually, you need to go back into this book and find out what's good in it. This is not the end of the world for Custodians. They are not, a terrible faction now. They don't have any play, stuff like that. So I think they're B tier.
I think they are B tier, but like low on it. Now, Ryan Snyder style builds, and that's, if you don't know, that's like 3 Caladius, 3 Palace, a whole bunch of bikes, like bike captain saying, I don't care about OBSEC, I don't care about command points, I don't get to use those strats anyway, where you just run at your opponent, find angles, and try and blow them up. That is about the same as it was before, and because Ryan Snyder never activated those strats anyway, so
doesn't need CP,
doesn't need OBSEC, you just find angles and you blow your opponent up. That actually could be still quite good, I think.
Yeah. Custodians overall, one of their problems was the fact that they don't have great secondary play. It's still not amazing. And this update doesn't help at all because they relied on, I just survive into the late game and I'll beat you on primary, keep secondaries relatively close. But they don't have a great secondary game.
No, their secondary game was usually, my opponent's secondary game will be worse than mine.
Yeah. Which is a hard thing to rely on because some of these other factions up there have very good secondary play.
Yeah. They have good objective control if they're on it with OBSEC. They heroic 6 inches with characters. They count as 2 models. So if they're on an objective with OBSEC, it is remarkably hard to dig them off. Mm-hmm. Shield guard behind a wall will never die to anything, which is kind of nice.
Yep.
So there are positives. They're not even close to as good as they were before.
No, they got hit quite hard.
Yeah, they got hit the hardest out of any army. To date, I think, in 9th edition, in a single nerf, they got hit the hardest.
I think you're going to see the value of just having cheap screens as well once we talk about some of the S-tier armies. Drukhari have that, Custodians don't. They're trading a real resource every time, and that just, if you're playing down against a higher tier faction, that's going to really hurt. So I think they're B tier.
Okay, I think they are B tier as well. I don't think there's going to be really many armies that fall into D tier. I think there's going to be one.
I think there's one exactly, and I'm looking at it right now.
That's right.
I think everybody knows that one. All right, so next up is Demons.
That's right.
Demons got nothing in this update.
And that is not what they needed.
0.
Yes.
They should have got some sort of help. Armor of Contempt, if you Marines and Sisters, I think Sisters were like lower A tier and Marines were B tier.
Yeah.
Demons were down here. They really needed some help. And something like an Armor of Contempt rule, which is done based on demons, would have been super helpful for them, but nothing.
They got nothing. Yeah, and they bounce off Armor of Contempt hardcore.
Yep, they basically have to rely on mortal wounds. They don't do it the best out of the armies up here, like Thousand Sons. Tyranids are a very good mortal army. We've got Grey Knights up there, so they don't compete in the mortals. They have big monsters that are easy to move block, that are their damage dealers.
They're also super easy to kill. I was shocked. I played in the Slaanesh Demons with Custodes at LVO, and I was shocked at how fast that big monsters that cost a lot of points were going down. They didn't get better.
They do like that indirect fire is going to be rare.
Yes.
Because that was just brutal against demons, because they have a lot of cheap nonsense units. So less indirect fire, it does help them. I think out of the builds that you can go with pure demons, I guess Be'lakor would be the best.
It's got to be, right? At least gives them some kind of defense.
They at least have some 9th edition rules. Untargetable things are good. Be'lakor is relatively defensible. But
you can run pink horror bricks.
This is an army that struggles into most armies in the game.
Yes, most armies in the game will have the firepower to kill them. Now, they could be slight beneficiaries of Armor of Contempt in that people switch to multi-meltas and things like that army with invulns or plasma and stuff that the army with invulns doesn't care about.
Yep.
Honestly, that is like a trickle-down effect that demons aren't really going to see in events.
It would be beneficial if the like infantry-heavy demon builds were actually good, but they're not.
I think it's the monster mash only?
They just don't do any damage. It's the same case as something like the OBSEC Necron build, where as the game is gone on through 9th edition, the damage of the game has dramatically increased. And if you don't do damage, you barely kill any of your opponent's units, you are getting tabled. And very likely by turn 3 at this point.
Yeah, Custodes aren't the highest damage dealing army out there. They're kind of midline, honestly. And they will just pick up a demon army in a couple turns.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let alone armies like Grey Knights or Tau.
Yeah, Tau will pick up the army in one turn.
Absolutely brutal. So I think this is definitely a C tier army.
I think it's a D tier army. If it's not a D tier army, what are we talking about?
You think this is a D tier army? I think it's better than the army that I want to put in D tier.
Is it that one?
Yeah.
I think they can both.
At least they have. So
I think they can share real estate down there.
Okay, we can put them at D tier because at the end of the day, they at least have some tricks and they have combat. And combat, you need some sort of combat in the game nowadays.
You do. You can win games off of having the epitome no fallback and 30 pink horrors wrapped on your opponent. You're on every objective.
That is more than the army that I want to put down here.
Yeah, but I also think that they can both be down in D tier together.
Okay, we can look at it, and if there's a giant gap, I want to move them up.
That's fair.
All right,
let's get to armies that got better.
Hey, there's all these helmets here. What are they? Well, they're Space Marines, and they got an amazing rule card called Armor of Contempt, which is -1 AP.
Yep,
all their
across
units,
the board. AP4 becomes AP3. AP17 becomes AP16.
Yes.
It used to be like most of the AP reduction is like AP1 goes to 0, AP2 goes to 1. And then if you get to 3, you're clear sailing. There's none of that anymore. So AP3 goes to AP2 if they're in cover. Functionally, AP1 and a Marine with a 3-up is now taking a 4-up against Plasma. That feels pretty good.
It's extremely good. It doesn't stack with the Storm Shields, luckily, because that would have just been insane. But it really benefits 2-up armor units.
Oh, yeah.
Terminators.
Natively 2-up armor units.
Yep. They love this. So it's a massive change for, guess what? Dark Angels. You know what they rely on? Terminators.
Oh, yeah. No, Dark Angel lists are now really just frustrating to try to kill.
Yep. They were, when they came out, a very frustrating army to deal with that transhuman all over their Terminators. Now with Armor of Contempt on top of that for free.
Yep. If your opponent doesn't have Ignores cover, and you're just toe cover with some guys,
yep.
AP2 goes, you still take 2-ups. AP3, you take 3-ups.
Yeah, you can, I would just pretty much, I think this really benefits the Relic Terminators, so you can bring some extra firepower if you want, but also Lightning Claw Terminators, so you get more volume of attacks.
Yeah, you drop all the Storm Shields, so all your Terminators get like 10 points cheaper.
Yeah.
And you take Twin Lightning Claws, or you take Relic Termies. I really like Relic Termies, especially in Dark Angels. Relic Terminators with a Lightning Claw and a Storm Bolter put out shots down range that aren't nothing, they're real. And then up close, they'll mulch you. They're AP3 into other Armor of Contempt, which is actually a thing because as we talk about Armor of Contempt armies, they struggle to kill other Armor of Contempt armies usually.
Yeah.
Marines have a lot of AP1, a lot of AP2, not ignores cover. And that is going to bounce real hard against other armies. They're just going to be the Spider-Man meme pointing at each other, not doing anything.
I shot my bolt guns. You shot your bolt guns.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Because we then used our apothecaries to revive the models.
And also, a lot of their shooting that can actually punch through Armor Contempt armies are 24-inch range. Eradicators, Hellblasters, Plasma Inceptors have 18-inch range. So you're going to find that Space Marine armies kind of just bounce off each other. And getting up to that AP in combat is a big deal. And Dark Angels are just going to walk through a lot of Space Marine firepower and just start putting lightning claws on people. Start putting hands.
Yep. They still have great characters as well, whether it's Azrael, Ezekiel, and then they also have the Talamasters, which is just still a very good thing because they can ignore cover, which is very useful. So Dark Angels, complete package in my opinion. I think they're one of the better Space Marine armies.
For sure.
Where do you feel?
They also, by the way, have a great speeder build.
Yeah.
Storm Speeder, whatever the one that hits on twos, I forget. Storm Speeder Thunderstrike. That's it. They're really good for cost now. Same thing with Land Speeder Vengeances. Very good, 120, a lot of plasma. The Dark Talons are quite good. They just shoot mortal wounds at you. So there's also a very fast speedery build that just shoots you. And all of them got functionally +1 to their armor save.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
It's all good.
Pretty good. I would put Dark Angels, honestly, in A tier.
Yeah.
By the way, the internal Space Marine metagame is going to matter quite a lot because there's so many Marine players at tournaments.
You think you want to put them ahead of Drukhari or just throw them in A for now?
We can throw them in A for now, and then we'll sort it out later.
Well, speaking of Drukhari, we've got a super chat from our very good friend and Art of War coach, Mr. Scary, who says, Drukhari's still A tier, baby. The Dark Kin.
That's right.
Thanks so much, Scary. Glad you joined us. All right, you ready for this? Black Templars, another faction that you love.
That's right.
We're kind of doing the more defensive Space Marine builds.
So this is like the grindy Space Marine builds that kind of exist in the center of the board. I think Dark Angels are... Now, Salamanders might be pretty good. I still haven't found a build I'm satisfied with. Whereas Dark Angels, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's all good.
Black Templars are... I think we're going to disagree slightly on this. I don't think they gained very much from the balance patch. I don't think they did. I think they're fine. I think their play style is not very good at the top levels. I know Tom Ogden was doing really well with it, and part of that might be player skill. Probably is, because he's a good player. But they have a play style where they kind of exist in the center and get hammered on, and hopefully try and come out the other side with a win. They're not particularly fast, so they just kind of have to take it for a couple turns. And they are durable. Now, Armor of Contempt has come out. Having cover is massively important because that takes you to a 2-up. And since your armor save, you're going to be taking your armor save a lot of the time. Having that cover save to stack on top of the armor save to stack on top of Armor of Contempt is massively important. So you really, I think Black Templars should drop the can't take cover vow, but you get a 5-up invuln and mini transhuman. I think you're going to start to drop that. Because cover, I think, is just going to be more important than that. Which means I think you drop the big bricks that have 4-up armor save guys. I think you take a lot of assault intercessors. But I still think it lends itself to the same problem. It's just going to exist in the center getting hammered. And it doesn't have that many ways to avoid that game plan. So I do think the Gravis units got better. The Gravis Eradicator squad definitely got better. Gravis Inceptor unit definitely got better. So I do think it got better as a whole. But I think it's still in B tier.
I do disagree because, one, when we see the armies at the top, mortal wounds are going to be a massive thing.
That is true.
Black Templars have one of the best defenses against mortal spam.
That's true. They have an army-wide 5-up feel no pain.
It's going to be super important for elite armies like Marines.
I'll counter that in 1 second when you're finished.
And then on top of that, I think if the meta switches to a lot of ignores cover and extremely high AP weapons, the 5-up invuln will matter, and that turn of 4-up.
That's true.
So those are the two counterpoints I would put.
So, if we're doing the debate format, rebuttal. I don't love trying to tech into what weapons people are taking because you can just run into somebody with the wrong weapons and you're like, oh, oops. Also, the thing about Black Templars against those armies that mass mortal wounds is they also have the damage to just put the hurt on you if you try and exist in midboard. I mean, not to spoil not to spoil it or nothing, but the top 3 armies will just lay into Black Templars if they exist in the center, whether or not, they ignore some of the mortal wounds coming their way. And I don't think those are winning matchups, even if you get a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortals. And also Space Marines can just get a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortals or off a chaplain that a lot of armies are including. So I don't think it's that big of a benefit. It isn't nothing. It comes up a lot, but I don't think it's going to help their survivability into the top 3 armies.
Okay. I mean, I do think that they're still one of the better Marine factions, so I'm happy to put them here, but we'll see where some of the other ones
Do you think they're
lie.
better than Custodes, for what it's worth?
We can put them up.
Boom. Boom.
They had a pretty even matchup into Old Custodes. If you ran the big Eradicator brick, now they do have an advantage.
I've played that game, and it's not close into Old Custodes. Old Custodes run them over.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But, I mean, I'm assuming if I got someone who was a little more practiced in the matchup, they could probably do better with the Black Templars than my opponent did.
Yeah. Deathwatch, an army that is always skirting around, and not too many people play it, but it's gotten several very good rules. And the core supplement that it received has some amazing relics, warlord traits, and good data sheets.
They can't be bad. They're super weird. I mean, I'm playing them later today. I've cribbed notes quite substantially from, and I'm rattling this off the top of my head, and I'm terrible with names. I believe Mike Costello is his name over in the UK. If I misremembered that, I deeply apologize. I have studied up on his work, and he has been doing quite well with Deathwatch Army of Renown, and I have taken notes. They are a strong army that can do some strong things. Their combat units can be quite fast because you can include units with multiple different speed brackets in there so that you can string out, get your combat into combat. Like your slow Terminators and stuff can be at the back of the unit. They charge, and then you have the 6-inch piling consolidate off the chaplain to get them all in there. So you can have Terminators going like 24 inches, which is very strong. And they also have a good shooting profile into a lot of armies with whatever the 3CP strat is called. Specialism Extremis, something like that. 3CP strat where every hit becomes a wound, which is...
It is worth 3CP.
It is super worth 3CP. So they actually have good play into a couple of the top armies. They suffer somewhat in that a lot of their damage is low AP. So into other Armored Contempt armies, you're going to have to either rely on your combat or outplay them or both. But that's not necessarily a bad place to be. They can do a lot of jank. They can teleport around, which is quite nice. So I think Deathwatch are a solid A tier. I just need practice games with them. They're weird. They're also super weird.
Another thing that helps them is the relic where you pick a data sheet and you get reroll wounds against it.
Oh yeah, Tome of Ectoclades.
There are several factions at the top that rely on a couple specific data sheets, and being able to say, hey, your best data sheets, I'm just going to reroll wounds against them, very powerful. And then on top of that, they have one of the best defensive Marine units in the game, which is the giant 10-man brick, 5 heavy Eradicators, and then heavy Intercessors, and then you put Eradicators, Plasma Inceptors, Aggressors in there, whatever you choose. And that thing with 5 of Feel No Pain, the Apothecary healing, it's just a nightmare to deal with.
It's an absolute bear. You can make the Sergeant 5 wounds.
Yep.
Because you give him there's a strat to give a Sergeant +1 wound and a Warlord trait, and then you pick the Warlord trait of +1 wound and a 6 of Feel No Pain. That dude is hard to kill. So that unit is very, very durable. I also know Fred Fortman has been playing Deathwatch Army of Renown, and I intend to consult with him as well if I look to run this in the future. He's been doing quite well with it also. I think Deathwatch are a clear A tier, but I just see the potential there. I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. I imagine Dark Angels are just easier to play overall, frankly.
They're certainly easier to build a list for.
Yeah.
Certainly easier.
But these two are pretty close in my mind.
Yeah. Deathwatch have a little more jank. Dark Angels just are like, I have a 2-up with Transhuman with -1 damage and blah, 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 blah. And then you just exist in the center of the board at people.
Deathwatch have an absurd secondary against Xenos armies, and you're going to see there's a lot of Xenos at the top.
Yes.
So that helps them. Dark Angels have a very good defensive secondary, and they can play, I'm just going to sit on my half of the board, and if you don't do anything, I just win.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
both going in their favor.
Gunner side, Can you point out GSC to him? Because he's missed the GSC. It is right there. It is between Tau and Imperial Knights.
Yep, right here. It's the Kellermorph.
That's right.
The friendly Kellermorph. And then we've got Salamanders as the last of the grindy builds. They got a brand new chapter trait of no reroll wounds against them.
Yeah.
Good ability.
It is very good, especially in the Space Marine mirror. Because, so, here's my theory for Space Marine internal metagame. Space Marine internal metagame is about who can kill the other person. If you can't kill the other person, you're in some trouble. So you have to take weapons with high AP. Now, what can you take with high AP? It's either Eradicators, Hellblasters, close range weapons, Inceptors, or it's combat. So who has the weapons that can hurt each other? Well, in everything except one Space Marine chapter, the combat is going to be Lightning Claws, right? Because they have AP3 in Assault Doctrine, which will likely be enough into a lot of these armies, and then they reroll wounds. Well, the thing about Salamanders, you can't reroll wounds against them. They're also going to be a lot of toughness 5. So Lightning Claws are going to straight up bounce against them. So that means in the internal metagame of Space Marines, I think Salamanders are actually quite solid. External metagame, there's actually not that much reroll wounds out there at the top level.
Generally, yeah. It's just sheer volume of fire.
Yeah. It's volume of fire. It's good profiles. So I think Salamanders are going to be an internal Space Marine bully more than an external Space Marine bully. Deathwatch actually got a huge boost, the Army of Renown, off of Salamanders because they can be a Salamanders army for 2 turns of the game. One turn with Salamanders, another turn with Inheritors of the Primarch, Successor Tactic, to be Salamanders again, which you can do. So I think...
that thing is incredible. Being able
Absolutely. So having it on demand in Deathwatch is quite strong. Salamanders being locked into it means they will bully most, not all, most other Marine chapters. There's one exception, I think. But they will bully most other Marine chapters, and I think they will struggle into other armies.
Which is an interesting place to be. Do you bring that to an event if you're expecting a lot of fellow Marine armies there, or do you bring it to a super major where you could play anybody? Exactly.
It depends on how you're looking to do. If you're looking to go 4-2, 5-1, I think Salamanders are great. If you're looking to go 6-0, not quite as much, I think, because you're going to have to run into one of those top armies, and Salamanders turning off reroll wounds doesn't really matter as much into them. And then at that point, I think you're just like a Black Templars army.
Yeah, but worse, in my opinion. I think Black Templars have some very good tricks.
I think
the model that ignores AP 1 and 2 on the Sergeant that you can just keep reviving, who has Armor of Contempt as well.
They don't stack.
They don't stack?
They don't stack because it reduces AP 1 and 2 to 0, and you can't reduce AP.
That guy's still very annoying.
He is still very annoying. I think Salamanders are going to belong at the top of B tier because they're going to prey on other Armor of Contempt armies, so the win rate is going to be good. You can expect to do well at events with them, but I think in terms of play into the overall metagame, I think the top armies are going to bully Salamanders. That's my thought.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
That's pretty reasonable.
But that is how I see the Space Marine metagame shaping up.
And we'll come back to it because we'll have a lot of Marine chapters.
Absolutely.
Got a $5 super chat from Mr. Matt O.
Matt
Is
O.
the Deathwatch Army of Renown one of the best counter meta plays into the new bugs? Auto wounding hits seems like it should kill quite a few Xenos.
Yeah, auto wounding hits at low AP. So you get a lot of shots at low AP, ignores cover, is going to be quite good into bugs, I think. I think it's actually going to pick up a lot of bugs. Whether that's going to be enough, we'll see. I don't know. Deathwatch is weird. But it's super cool and it's super powerful.
Yeah. And then we've got a $10 super chat from John. Thoughts on 10 Wolfguard Terminators with Combi Plasma and Lightning Claws? Keen Senses lets them nuke. Rune Priest gives them cover, -1 to be hit. Think you can bully midboard with that type of castle? You got Fight Last, you got Dreadnought.
Terminators. Yeah, Terminators could be really annoying. The problem is, I believe they only get double shots on their guns on bolt weapons out to 24, whereas Combi Plasmas are going to be inside 12. If you're inside 12 and shooting, if you have a way to double shots out to 24 that I don't know about in Space Wolves, certainly I think that would actually be really good. Inside 12 is not a range you really need to nuke, but I do think Wolfguard Termies are good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're one of the much improved units in Space Wolves.
For sure. Giving cover is not as important. -1 to be hit is super important, but cover is not as important because there's cover all over boards usually.
Yep.
You can just stand in. Cover is a lot more important to like Dreadnoughts, which don't normally get it, but they will get it off the Rune Priest, and then they have a 2-up with, Armor
really
Contempt.
it's, the Redemptors that you want to take, or any other dreads, very good there.
Very, very good.
So I think Space Wolves are much improved. I know I was pretty down on them in the last tier list, and we'll get to them, but I definitely think they are much improved.
Absolutely.
As all Space Marines are, frankly.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a very interesting metagame going forward.
All right, thanks so much for the super chats. We've got Death Guard up next. An army that received 2 things, Armor of Contempt and OBSEC on their Terminators.
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the worst armies before the update.
Yep.
Their game plan now works a lot better.
Being able to exist on objectives, they're too slow to get across the board. There are a couple units that have relative speed, but they're still not amazing.
Relative.
Like the Blow Drones.
Yeah, like 10 inches.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So they really struggle with the speed aspect. They don't get to interact on your opponent's half of the board unless your opponent makes a mistake, kills a handful of Poxwalkers, and you regrow, walk on their objective.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. If your opponent's making those type of mistakes, they're not doing it at the top levels generally.
Yeah.
They're just murdering every Poxwalker, get rid of their OBSEC that wants to be on your half of the board, and then just go from there.
Yeah.
So they also just got points increases for no reason whatsoever in Chapter Approved, which hurt. But OBSEC is a big deal on Terminators because they are the best data sheets in that book, in my opinion.
It was also fairly easy to kill the OBSEC out from under the Terminators and then contest the objective, which you can no longer do.
Nope. So you do have to deal with the Terminators at some point, but if you have mechanics to just slow them down, keep them on their half of the board, keep the game close, and then get behind them as they come towards you, that's really where you can secure a win.
They also tend to take the first couple turns off because they're taking those turns to move up the board and develop pieces, and you just can't do that. If you fall into a points hole, you just may never be able to dig yourself out. That's kind of a problem. But let me tell you the reason why I don't think that they're doing really good in the meta right now.
Yeah.
Mortal Wounds. Mortal Wounds, the top armies right now absolutely pump out Mortal Wounds like they've turned on a fire hose. And Death Guard will melt under it so quickly.
They did not get more extra mortal protection.
They did not get any kind of protection against Mortal Wounds, which was already the way to kill them. And now, if you just have a couple smites in the bank, that's probably good enough. Like, Grey Knights, Craft World, Nids will all...
Thousand
Suns will all clown on Death Guard because they will just pick up, 400 points a turn. It's brutal. They have no defense against it at all. That's a real problem. I don't know where that leaves them. Certainly not A tier.
No.
There's no way. With their lack of speed and their huge vulnerability to the top armies,
they're a book that just doesn't reward player skill that much, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Which is why I know everybody always posts, we have such a low opinion of Death Guard. It's just that army is so hard to play because it has so few tools that are relevant.
It doesn't mean hard to play, hard skill-wise.
Yeah, hard.
It means there's just not that many levers you can pull to affect the game state.
Yep. So I have never struggled against Death Guard when I'm running an actual army.
Yeah.
So
same.
I have a pretty low opinion of it. They are much better. The Terminators with OBSEC means they can hold down their primary pretty well now. It's just they're not doing anything about your side of the board, and that is just a losing proposition. It puts the game entirely in your opponent's hands to dictate.
Yeah. I
can't do that against top players.
This to be the biggest discrepancy between our tier list and win rate.
Yeah.
Because win rate, Death Guard bully mid-tables. They will absolutely bully mid-tables. They will annihilate people, and people will go, there was nothing I could have done, Death Guard OP now. And that's not the case. If you play into their game plan, they will wreck you. But if you know how to move block, if you know how to just play for objectives, if you don't run right into the middle of their death ball, they don't have much they can do about it. And that's leaving out the fact that Mortal Wounds melt them hard, and they're expensive. And if you have any Mortal Wounds, buy. So I think it's a pretty clear-cut C tier, to be honest.
Boom.
Speed wins games. Lack of speed loses games, for sure.
It's just you are always giving the initiative to your opponent, and if you do that against top players, time after time, you're just going to lose games.
Yep.
So
the best weapon against, after Mortal Wounds, I guess, the best weapon against Death Guard is a tape measure. You measure 17 inches away from them. Everything other than that is your playground.
They need some actual help, more than they got. They need just quite a bit more, frankly.
Yeah.
So they definitely need to go back down in points.
But
that would be a start.
They will bully mid-tier tables, like for sure.
Yeah.
Death Guard can... So, Michael, Death Guard gets speed in 2 ways. 1, bloat drones. Not good enough in my opinion. Especially with the way the damage is in the meta right now, those will get picked up real fast. Second, if you're in the Army of Renown, for like 2 CP, all of your Poxwalkers can get 3 inches of extra movement. They go up to movement 7 for 2 CP. And you don't get vehicles at that point. And you have to be Mortarians Anvil.
Or Harbingers, right?
Or it's Harbingers. I get them mixed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be whatever Typhus is. I
You can't do us like that. We're doing it.
But that's really the only ways you can get speed in that army, and both of those are not really speed, by my opinion. When Space Marines, Vanguard veterans are faster than all of those.
To be fair, you could put them down here at the bottom of B, but that's where I would be putting them.
Yeah.
So let's go on to Sisters.
Sisters.
Dramatically improved.
Biggest beneficiaries of Armor of Contempt, Loki, out of any of these chapters. Because the Valorous Heart change doesn't really matter. Oh no, you're not rerolling your 2-ups to wound me. Yeah. Bloody Rose basically combined Bloody Rose and Valorous Heart together. And that's super good. They're cheap. They're really cheap, and they're hard to dig out of cover. Really, really annoying. And they can have a 5-up invul army wide, so that means if you're firing these Eradicators at them, what are we even doing here? Rhinos, which Sisters really like, and Space Marines should probably start like splashing in a little more, but Sisters love their Rhinos. Well, guess what? Rhinos are hard to kill now. They're probably the best improved unit in the army. Sisters, and also Sisters just straight up ignore Armor of Contempt. They're made out of multi-meltas. They're made out of Repentia that are AP4. They don't care.
Nope.
But I think they're the biggest beneficiary. People are going to bring Marines again. Sisters eat Marines. And Sisters got Armor of Contempt so that they got more durable. In an army that was already sneakily durable because they all have 3-up armor and they're all in cover. So it's like if you can't deal with that, you just can't deal with that. It looks like we got a couple super chats.
Got a $2 super chat from Bonsai Kitty Gaming saying, what army highest skill ceiling to reward ratio?
Probably Eldar.
Probably Eldar. Which is why, they're high 60s in terms of win rate, but still not completely dominant. But if you only took like the top 3 players of Eldar, they would have an absurd win rate.
They're brutal.
They would have, like a 6% win rate or something crazy.
If you can't move multiple units like 16 to 18 inches against a good Eldar player, you cannot win.
You don't get to interact with them.
You don't get to do anything because they will shoot you really hard and then they will not get shot back.
Yep.
Because they will.
It's all about pre-measuring angles and then
screening with little units. It's brutal. Like I was building a Tau list that moves hilariously far, and I'm still like, if Nick plays it properly, I don't think I get to shoot him.
Yeah.
And he gets to shoot me.
I just get to sit there.
But if you're playing against a bad Eldar player, they will just let you scoop units that matter. Yep. And they are expensive.
Let's finish Sisters, and then we'll get back to the rest of them.
Yep. There's a question about Death Guard before we move on.
Okay. So Death Guard, $5 super chat. You guys are sleeping on Death Guard. Had great games with the Terminus S so far. Nid's Thousand Suns seem to be the greatest downfall of the list. And we totally agree with that. I think that, so in my opinion, Death Guard...
And Grey Knights, too.
And Grey Knights.
Yeah.
In terms of Death Guard, they were, in my opinion, in the previous one, also in that C tier, below Marines.
Yes.
Generally.
Yes.
Marines got better. Death Guard got better. Death Guard didn't get better enough that they're above Marines. And so, hence, they're below them.
Yes. They are... We know what the army does. It moves 5 inches at you, and it hopes that is enough. And it hopes that it can dig into objectives and be durable enough. And if you are a slow army, your opponent gets to dictate the pace of the game. And in a game where you and your opponent are both very good, that is not enough.
Yeah.
That's just not enough.
We try not to put on games on stream where they're going to be total blowouts. If I just put my Tau on the table against Nick's Death Guard, he's just dead. I can sit there and do nothing and then just win on the late game, or I could just table him. Either one. Effortlessly.
I played Blood Angels into them.
Yeah.
Blood Angels, he kept his army balled up so I could not interact with him at all. Full stop. And I still beat him. Because I just ran around the edges, and I just held objectives. And this was on a mission where he could walk to the center objective. There was a center objective. don't even get me started if there's no center objective. If there's no center objective and he needs to hold 2 to get 4 points, and he has his death ball in one corner of the board, he's getting 0 primary points for the entire game. Yep. Or he's getting exactly as many as I want him to have. And you cannot cede control over your opponent if both you and your opponent are very good. In mid-tables, Death Guard are going to run rampant. They're going to annihilate people. But they will, as soon as they hit a good player, they're going to bounce.
And you're going to see Thousand Sons and Nids, some of those armies that pump mortals that we've been talking about, you're going to see where they are.
Yes.
So you'll kind of get why Death Guard are going to struggle against that.
Yeah.
But they don't have many tools that help you win games.
Yeah. They just grind forward, and that better be enough.
And then we'll get to your question in a second, Brandon. So Sisters here.
A tier. Clear A tier.
They, in my opinion, were already A tier. I think they are 5 extra miracle dice. It's a huge deal.
That's true. We didn't even mention that.
Leap of Faith Leap of Faith is a great secondary now. Just automatic 12, no problem. So you don't have to take to the last, which means you can use your pieces more aggressively if you need to.
Yep. I think they are top of A tier right now. They're clearly better than Drukhari.
Yep. That has switched. Because it used to be very clearly Drukhari above them. Sisters are amazing.
They are so amazing.
They did not need Armor of Contempt, in my opinion. The Miracle Dice change and then some points decreases would have been enough. Armor of Contempt is massive for them. If there weren't more broken armies, they would be one of the top 2 armies in the game.
Yeah, for sure. They are also one of those armies that has a high skill ceiling to reward ratio. Mm-hmm. You just don't see them anywhere, but they are stupidly good now.
Yep. So I expect to be seeing Sisters doing very well for the players who are just dedicated Sisters players and get a lot of reps with this army because it has almost every tool in the game that you could possibly want.
Yeah. It beats up on Armor of Contempt. It benefits from Armor of Contempt. It's just an amazing combination.
Yep. And it's not relying on single data sheets. It has a whole array of data sheets that are very good.
You fill out a battalion with this army.
Yep.
Yeah.
Likely running Bloody Rose because it has the defense and the offense now.
Yeah.
But
also, Repentia.
They got a supplement for Bloody Rose.
Repentia kind of just killed everything in the metagame at the moment.
Yep. Yeah. You're going to go back to seeing 3 Repentia units.
For sure.
Minimum 2. All right.
Also, Indirect went away, which was huge against Sisters.
Huge.
Yeah, Sisters, honestly, if there weren't some other codexes that we're about to talk about, they would be an S tier.
Yeah.
But there are. And those codexes are so much better than the rest of the metagame that, unfortunately, S tier doesn't get to exist for anything else.
All right, Jack, remind me when we get to NIDs, we'll talk about their best secondary options because we both played against the NID armies and they got an amazing secondary game. Well, we'll get there, Brandon. But,
if you've been paying attention, you will know where NIDs are going to go.
Luis with a $5 super chat says, doesn't the amount of mortal wounds affect all Space Marines, especially Terminator Heavy Dark Angels? Why have them above Space Wolves? Great content, guys. Thanks so much. Very much appreciate your support.
So it does affect them, for sure. Yep. If you have a chaplain, there's just a chance to 5 field payment against mortal wounds, which is great. We haven't ranked Space Wolves yet. That S is Salamanders, but they will be above Space Wolves, in my opinion. Dark Angels. Any Marine army probably wants to have some kind of mortal wound protection, and I think if you have a chaplain, boom, switch over 1 of the chance to 5 against mortal wounds.
Yep.
It's easy.
So they're almost already running the chaplain anyway, so it's an easy swap of one of those powers. You probably don't take the buff chaplain anymore, the combat chaplain. You instead
probably
just take
not.
a buffing chaplain.
Yeah.
And then they also have, unlike Death Guard, the apothecary to just bring back models. So if they soak up, 2 Terminators die in the psychic phase, and then they don't finish off the unit, you'll just bring models back.
Yeah.
It's fine.
They
also have Rites of War, so they're equivalent on, hey, my Terminators are OBSEC.
Yes.
So no difference there.
We have a $10 super chat from Garrett. I actually beat out Grey Knight Sisters and should have beat out NIDS, but lost by 1 point because did not see you could score 8 primary endgame and took a poor secondary since this was first time. I don't know what army you played.
But that is impressive.
That is impressive.
All you can ask is when you go into a game...
Oh, he played Death Guard.
Playing Death Guard.
Here, yeah.
All you can ask is when you go into a game is, can I keep this close? Yeah. If you're keeping a game close, then it always came down to some of the decisions that you made. Some of them were less effective. Some of them, like in this case, you already recognize one of them, which is poor secondary choices. If you take poor secondaries, not only do they affect the points that you're going to score in that game, but how you play the game. Your secondaries dictate how you're going to actually play that game. And if you took poor ones, you're probably going to take the wrong game plan for that matchup.
Yeah. Now, I anybody can beat anybody. That's generally how it works. If we take one army and we put anybody on it, and we take another army and we put anybody on it, either army can win. That's not. I don't think that's particularly up for debate. But if both people are of equal skill level, and critically, if your opponent knows how to exploit your weaknesses, you're going to have a much harder time than you did. I think I don't particularly love anecdotes for a tier list. Not that I'm saying I assume you just play better than your opponent, which good for you. But I think that's what happened, honestly.
Yeah, and the case is, this is why I took 8th edition Tau to ACO when the broken Drukhari meta beat 4 Drukhari players,
and you're not
including Sean Naden with 8th edition Tau.
Yeah, you're not going to come into a tier list and be like, I think I beat Drukhari personally, so therefore Tau are better.
Yeah, it was like I recognized that I was playing down each of those matchups, but I took a list that was very tailored for Drukhari and that people didn't have experience against, and was able to outplay them.
Yes.
That's how I won. And so the same thing, if people in your local area, maybe terrain is very good for Death Guard in particular because there's not a lot of angles and you can easily move up the board and then act from there without getting hit with very much damage. That definitely does help Death Guard. So...
yeah, chat really wants Death Guard and B tier. Unfortunately, this is our tier list. And, if you want to come to a tournament with Death Guard and play one of us, that is up to you.
Speaking of which, $2 super chat from Bonsai here saying, if you were to...
one trick
army, which would it be? Death Guard.
They just can do chat. Every game plan.
You're welcome, chat.
Yeah.
Nids scare us too. Thanks so much for the $5 super chat. We are going to get to the Nids.
Are
Don't
terrifying.
you worry.
All right.
They're at the end.
So this is your favorite.
The forces of the Adeptus Mechanicus. They got nothing in this update. They did get the army-wide or the game-wide change of indirect fire. Indirect fire was one of the brutal things for AdMech. It's a bunch of T3 bodies all over the place with 4-up saves. Don't like any of indirect fire, and they struggled against the Orc buggy spam, and then Hive Guard was annoying for AdMech. And then, obviously, the Craft World build that came out, and Tau. They
love to just post up these fragile units that hit like trucks in the center of the board behind terrain.
Yep.
Indirect murdered that. Indirect is no longer murdering anything.
Yeah. So, luckily, Indirect went down. This is the biggest benefit for AdMech, is you actually get to play the older style of I'm going to trade with you and start initiating them and force you to commit your damage into my Rangers while getting close to them, so I get to hit you with Rust Stalkers. That's basically how AdMech Veteran Cohort plays. Now... Armor of Contempt is a extremely annoying change because AdMech doesn't have a lot of ways to increase AP.
Yeah. And
on top of that, their shooting is, for the most part, AP1 or AP2.
Yeah, you can have Las chickens.
They do have Ignore Cover on the Omnispecs on the Ranger bricks, but they are dramatically less useful against the mid-tier armies now. Whereas before,
true.
Your units were just dead.
Terminators are now getting 3-ups against you even with Ignores Cover. Meh.
Yep.
The Iron Striders... Are Iron Striders?
Yeah.
Yeah. Iron Striders are not great because they will lose shooting wars a lot of the time. They're very fragile.
Yeah. They weren't even great when they were 10 points cheaper and had all the buffs. I still ran a couple solo ones, but they weren't even great then. They're not good now. They basically did nothing at LVO. I ran 5 vehicles and they all were terrible. And the entire reason that I won LVO with AdMech was because Rust Stalkers and Rangers are good units.
Yes.
That was they hold up the entire army.
Yeah, for sure.
Those 2 data sheets. So those 2 data sheets are still very strong, in my opinion. The problem here is I think AdMech has to tailor very specifically for these mid-tier armies now that are going to just dominate with Armor of Contempt. And that means Agrippina, which is extra AP and half range.
You love your Agrippina.
I swear, this is going to be the way to play AdMech if you want to do shooting damage. If you want to just go pure melee, you can do that and just do a different list. But if you want to bring Rangers, I think you need to be Agrippina to get AP3 Ignore Cover.
Absolutely. I still think they're quite good. I think, honestly, the metagame has contracted a lot. A lot of armies are very close to each other in terms of power level, which is a great place to be, with some notable exceptions. Like Demons. A lot of the metagame is going to be close to each other. So I don't think C or A tier is particularly bad. Now, that being said, I don't think AdMech is in C tier. I think it's in B tier. I think that's where you're aiming to put them.
Yep.
Top of B tier, I would say.
I do think they have more tools than Marines.
They do.
That are useful.
For sure. They have the speed, and speed wins games.
They get to initiate plays against a lot of them. On top of that, there's a couple other things that are helping AdMech here. So first of all, Cerberus Raiders are back to being awesome sauce. Bodyguard was the main thing that restricted them doing damage. Bodyguard is no more. They
Bye-bye.
just look out, sir. Awesome. You're going to look out, sir. Here come my snipers. Well, guess what? It's a 9-man unit. I can make them hit on 2s. I can very easily get them to reroll 1s. And they're going to pump out a bunch of shots at AP3 because they're Agrippina.
Agrippina!
So, really like... And then there are speed units, so they can contest objectives, move block at the same time. Cerberus Raiders are back up in value, in my opinion. So, all of that going in AdMech's favor. I still worry about their durability in against modern armies because mortal wounds is such a prevalent thing.
Yeah,
and
especially mortal wounds out of line of sight, which is so
AdMech
stupid.
doesn't like it. So I think they are going to struggle against the top armies. On top of that, they also struggle against toughness 8 units because Rangers are strength 4. And there's several armies that have -1 strength to incoming weapons. You can get +1 to wound in the veteran cohort, but it's a very pricey combo and typically isn't worth it when I've used it.
Yeah.
So
You're going to struggle to put down any of the toughness 8 units that are in the metagame right now.
where could they be, Jack?
Where could they be? They might be lurking somewhere at the end of this list.
That said,
I think they're better than the Salamanders and Black Templars.
I do think they're better than the slower armies because they can initiate things. Yeah. Are they better than Dark Angels and Deathwatch? It is possible. I think I can play into them with Agrippina.
I think in terms of slow, grindy armies that just kind of slowly grind at you, I think Dark Angels and Deathwatch are going to be the highest that reaches.
Probably.
Because I think they have just more tools than any of the other slow, grindy armies have, and that is the height. And I think that they are slightly better than AdMech, but AdMech are still real solid.
Yeah.
Real solid.
I think if it was just me playing it, I would put them up here, near Sisters. But we're doing every top, the top AdMech players as a whole.
Yeah. If we weren't grading on like a curve, there's a lot of A tier armies right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot. This isn't one though.
Craft Worlds. Get ready for this. So €2 super chat. AdMech Graia versus Mortals. No, Graia offers nothing besides that, and that is just not enough to keep AdMech up. Whereas the Forge Worlds like Metallica, Agrippina, and Mars actually offer a bunch of things.
Yeah.
So you really need, if you look at the modern armies and the different options they have for their traits, usually it's a good trait, at least half of a good trait, and then you have a good relic, warlord trait, and stratagem, or at least 2 of those. And Graia is half of a trait is the only thing that's good about it.
Yeah.
That's not enough to hold up an army,
Yeah,
even though that is decent.
Existing in the Mortals is not a real plan.
You're still going to get just wiped.
Yeah, you need to not take them. Now, if you have access to a 5 against Mortals without undermining your game plan, take it, by all means. Blunt the damage when it hits you.
Yeah.
But just having 5 against Mortals, you will still die.
You can't make your army worse just for that particular scenario, which is why I think Cerberus Raiders being better helps against all those characters that want to put out Mortals.
Absolutely.
So,
Craft Worlds, though, are brutal in good hands. They are.
Tell us about Craft Worlds,
Oh
Jack.
my god. Hail of Doom ignores cover. And in other metas, particularly when you don't need overwhelming damage, i.e. against NIDs, when you don't need overwhelming damage, Ulthway builds are very hard to beat too. Ulthway builds can just score 1,000,000 points and then punish you for trying to do anything about it. But Hail of Doom ignores cover, shoots harder than any other army in the game, has extreme mobility, and is almost impossible to hit back. They will find you, they will kill you, and you have very little to do about it if your opponent doesn't mess up. If they mess up, they will lose large swaths of their army, for sure, 100%. But if they don't mess up, if they don't, if they take time in their movement phase to make sure, okay, this is exactly as far as you can go. So I'm going to make sure that when my unit fire and fades, it's going to be right here where you can't quite shoot it. And then they're going to shoot you. And then over here, this jet bike unit's going to shoot. And then it's going to 6-inch battle focus with the strat behind the wall. And it's brutal, man. You just get tabled and there's nothing you can do about it.
Explain what Hail of Doom is.
So Hail of Doom is every 6 to hit is an auto wound that counts as a 6 to wound. I don't know who decided that was a good idea to put in the game.
On Shuriken.
On Shuriken. The 6 to wound matters because that increases the AP by 2. So that means you put down Guide on a unit of Dire Avengers, and that thing will scoop almost anything that it shoots at. Because every 6 to hit is an auto wound, a strength 4 gun, which is stupid. And it just is. On a strength 4 gun, an AP 4 ignores cover because that's just the second half, which is something you need nowadays. If they didn't have ignores cover, they would have problems. But Yeah, Hail of Doom on a unit, Hail of Doom ignore cover on a unit of jet bikes with shuriken cannons will scoop almost anything at 24 inches. So they just need to find that angle of 24 and then fire and fade behind a wall, and you can't do anything about it. And they have so much trash to just keep throwing out every turn. They can throw out a Viper. They can throw out a Warwalker. They can, have a Webway Gate. They can toss out like 10 Guardians out of it to just like tag something, take a bunch of objectives with primary, and move block you. That they have so much trash that they can just keep throwing it out all game while shredding you with no return fire. It is obnoxious to play against.
Yep.
Not to mention they have Bahroth, who will just take like 15 points off your score over the course of a game. Just by himself. It's a brutal army to play against, but the win rate isn't going to be super high, because if you do let yourself be exposed, you're going to die. They're not particularly durable, and they are kind of expensive. 10-man Dire Avengers die to almost anything, but if your opponent keeps them safe, there is no indirect in the meta anymore.
Yeah.
And there's not much you can do about it.
So. Eldar had some of the best indirect fire in the game. Yes, they miss having that. But at the same time, they benefit from their opponents not having indirect fire, because their whole army is about, you don't get to do anything about what I'm trying to do. The Swooping Hawks back behind terrain. The bikes.
I didn't even mention the Swooping Hawks.
All of that, like, I keep seeing, people keep saying, Eldar aren't that good, they're not that good. You're not playing Eldar right. You shouldn't be taking any damage whatsoever. Pre-measure exactly where your opponent can go. If they can get an angle behind the terrain piece that you're going to put your stuff behind, go ahead and throw a Viper out there, move block them so they can't reach that spot with their guns.
Yep.
It's that simple.
You have to plan out your entire turn in advance. You can't just figure it out on the fly. But, if you do, there is nothing your opponent can do about it.
Your opponent has no recourse. So this is why they're so powerful, is if you play them properly, you just get to do whatever you want the whole game, and your opponent has no choice.
None.
Just sit there.
Yeah.
Everybody looks like Death Guard when Craftworlds is just shooting you the whole
Tau
game.
looks like Death Guard. Tau move 18 inches and shoot you.
Yeah.
And they still have trouble getting line of sight against Eldar. It's insane. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, against Nick on Eldar, against me when I played my Ulthway build, against good players playing Eldar, even 18-inch move might not do it.
I think everybody can see where this is going.
It's S.
It's S. It's a clear S tier army. They are broken. They need nerfs. They do. They escape the balance update without any nerfs. They need them.
Yeah. But against bad players, you will table them at lightning speed.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
So we got a $5 super chat here from, like, a smiley face. I might have missed it earlier.
Oh, that's not a smile.
It's
like a face.
But what Space Marine Infantry got the largest buff with Armor of Contempt? Gravis, Phobos, Terminators, Power Armor. They all did. I think Terminators are the best.
Probably. Gravis are a close second.
Yeah, Terminators and Gravis. Super strong now.
Super
you
strong.
weren't running that many Terminators before. They were just too slow, too grindy because of the speed of the game. But now with them being this tanky, you force your opponent to have to do something about it.
Absolutely.
So they are much better in my opinion.
Thoughts?
Worth their cost for sure.
Yeah, $2 super chat from Brian. Thoughts on Argent Shroud over Bloody Rose? I love Bloody Rose because they're the only one that hits in combat.
Yep.
And Bloody Rose hits hard in
and you
combat.
need to right
and
now.
You need to. You just have to. We got a $10 super chat from Trey. Thanks for the live streams. Buy yourself some beers. Thank you. I will take both of those beers because Seeks won't.
No.
No.
With a Necrodermis, you don't need a drink.
That's right. It just like drops right through your
All right, next up is a faction near and dear to our hearts. It is the Grey Knights. They have Terminators. Terminators are vastly improved. Paladins, vastly improved, even though they're pricey. Guess what, Jack? Armor of Contempt, right? I'm a 2-up armor, sitting in cover on a 1-up, and then I put Armor of Resilience on myself for a 0-up.
Yep.
And then I reduce their AP by 1.
Yep.
Sounds good, right?
It's pretty good. Now, I played a practice game of this into a bit of a worse version. Not super worse, but a bit of a worse version of Eldar. It's definitely not as fine-tuned as Nick's list is now. But it was Nick, and it was on Eldar. And I did beat it by a comfortable margin. Not like insane, but by a bit. You have a lot of tricks. A lot of tricks to help counter the fact that Eldar... In fact, they're one of the only armies that actually gets to shoot Eldar. Because you can blast holes in their screens in the psychic phase and then teleport into those holes with Gate of Infinity. Something very few armies, notably Thousand Sons do, but very few armies get to do that. Mm-hmm. And if you just teleport, they'll screen you out. If you teleport after blowing holes in their screens, All right, now we're talking. Now we're having a conversation. And if you stay out of Dire Avenger range, they can't kill Paladins that well. They can kill Terminators, but Paladins are kind of a problem. So it's very interesting, actually. I do think if we played the game again, Nick has gotten better information. I think he should have the edge. If we did play it again. But that being said, if it's possible, that does mean something for Grey Knights.
Yep, and I don't think you played a super optimized, like here's what the new Grey Knight list is. There's still things to test.
Absolutely. So I think Grey Knights are actually very strong.
I agree. They have the native defense against mortals, which is very important right now. And on top of that, I believe the Chaplain should come back. Not only do you need extra damage, so Words of Power is very good, but you could also go for the I just can't be affected by psychic powers.
Unfortunately, that does not apply to the Mortal Wounds off the Maleceptor for some unknown reason. If they FAQ it to being where they count as a psychic power, a lot of armies actually have significantly more play into them. Black Templars have a chance to ignore it. Grey Knights have a chance to ignore it. Sisters have a chance to ignore it. But they're not psychic powers, so they'll just pick you up.
But if we're talking about Craft Worlds, we're talking about Thousand Suns, which we're going to see other Grey Knight armies. That power is extremely warping in the particular game. So
absolutely.
I think that is a tool that has been undervalued, and that is actually important now.
Yeah, they trump the other Mortal Wound armies,
Yep.
generally. Thousand Suns, they do Mortal Wounds to you, you take 5-ups. You do Mortal Wounds to them, they die.
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Also, they are pretty good in combat with Rapiers. Yep. You take Rapiers, you get +1 attack. If you Drago them, 6s explode. Yep. And you have swords, you will carve through people in combat, which is a very big deal nowadays.
So, I like them quite a bit. Where are you thinking here?
I'm thinking A tier.
I'm definitely thinking A tier. Where in A tier?
I think they're better than Drukhari. I don't even know if Drukhari should be where they're at. I think Drukhari might be... they have speed.
They have speed.
If you have speed, you are at least this good.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to put Grey Knights. We have a $5 super chat from Miles. Let's see me some Miles. Knights of Titan, let's go. Where do you guys think Nemesis Dread Knights fall? I've heard very different opinions.
Good question.
What do you think? I have my opinion.
I think they are dramatically less powerful now.
They are less powerful.
Because of Armor of Contempt.
Yes, they don't get it, and Space Marines do get it, and that means your damage into Space Marines not as good. Yeah. On the other hand, if your plan is, and your plan can just be, I'm going to outplay Marines, and I want to have my best army into the top couple, Dread Knights are amazing. They have ranged firepower into NIDs, which does matter because NIDs don't shoot that hard. So if you can just pour as many shots as possible into them at medium AP, that's pretty good. And into Eldar, being able to teleport around and every time you get line of sight to a unit, it is gone, is very, 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 very strong, especially at 30-inch range, which they would be. So I think they're actually really good if you go for that build, but you're acknowledging, I am outplaying Armor of Contempt. Mm-hmm. That's got to be your plan.
Yep.
But if that's your plan, it's not a bad army.
I definitely like still running the one Grandmaster. Maybe a second Dread Knight on top of that, and just have those two. But I don't think the I'm just going to run all the Dread Knights is as good now.
Yeah.
I think you really do want to take advantage of Armor of Contempt. Now, Inceptors, 100%. Just get them all in there. They're amazing.
Interceptors?
Yeah, Interceptors.
Yeah. It's so hard to keep the names straight because they're all the same. 30 Interceptors feels mandatory to me. They just got better.
And Rhinos are massively improved, and I think you want a couple in the Grey Knight list.
Yeah, for sure. So...
yeah, I think they can go right there.
They're real strong. Mortal Wounds, now, they just trump other Mortal Wound armies with one exception.
Yeah. Harlequins, an army that got a nerf hammer. Right, Jack?
They did. They got a substantial one.
They
Not as hard as Custodians for some reason, but
Void
they
Weavers got hit.
They did get hit. They went up 40 points per model, from 90 to 130.
And then Mirror Architect is no longer an aura for everything. It's a picky core unit, and then it gets the -6-inch range. So... once again, also less effective because a lot of armies didn't have trouble killing the troops. It was the massive boats that you struggled against.
Yeah.
And they are less powerful now.
Yep, less powerful and less prevalent because they are just more expensive. If you take 9 Void, we were just spending an extra 360 points you were not spending before.
Yep. I still believe that Harlequins have quite a bit of play. They're a high skill cap army. They still have an outstanding speed. They have very good tricks. And they have good rules overall. Dark is still extremely strong.
Dark is still extremely strong.
Extra AP, they got Fight on Death, and they can turn off Overwatch, which is very useful now. So, I still think they're pretty powerful. Where do you rate them?
I think they're I mean, we're gonna put there's such a glut in A tier, but I think they are in A tier.
Yeah,
they're fast. They're better than Drukhari. I think they're better Drukhari.
I agree. I still think they're one of the better armies in the game. They just don't table you in 2 turns with their shooting.
Yeah, now they have to get in, take your objectives away with troops, and get in combat with dark, and they're still real good.
Exactly. They play that older style of, I'm just going to outplay you on the mission, and you're going to struggle.
And if you're a slow army, there is not much you can do about it. You can see my game into Nick, where he was playing Harlequins, I was playing Salamanders. He couldn't kill the Dreadnoughts for love or money, but he could take my objectives away, and that's what he did. Mm-hmm. Speed wins games.
All right, we have them finally. Guard did get particular buffs. So first of all, they are not impacted by the interact change. So they don't get -1 ballistic skill, and their opponent doesn't get +1 save when they get hit by full payload mana cores or wyverns, what have you. So they have some of the better indirect fire in the game right now. And then on top of that, 6s to hit auto wound.
Yeah, which is a big.
And they're a volume of fire army.
Now they did get a big buff. Also, I don't. Did you mention that infantry squads now get all their options for free?
Yep. So you'll have infantry squads with the special weapon in there, and
the heavy weapon, and a melee weapon, and a Vox caster, so you can spend that 3 CP on the worst strat in the game. Yeah, they got a lot.
They did. And
where do you think they go,
it's
Siegs?
Nowhere near enough. They're probably
not even close.
They just don't play the mission. They have to table you. That's the only way they can win.
Their shooting is not that great. If you see, we had a game between John and Nick, where Nick was running GSC, not a durable army by any means, and John was playing guard, and Nick was going into that being like, oh my god, I'm going to have to weather this massive amount of shooting. I'm going to get tabled. And John took his entire first shooting phase. Nick's like, wait, guard don't shoot that hard. It's like, no, they really still don't.
Let alone if there are minuses to hit and stuff.
Oh my gosh, there's minuses to hit. Or if you're firing to Armor of Contempt. If you're firing to Armor of Contempt, good luck, my man.
No.
Those Manticores are going to still be giving Terminators 2s in cover.
Yeah.
2s. What are we talking about?
Not to mention, you just are stuck in your deployment zone, because if you put too many things out, they get wrapped. You can't do anything. There's no counters. So the army just doesn't have tools.
Guard
and it is worse than Demons, in my opinion.
I think there's a spirited debate between the two of them, but I think that's both where they are. Yeah. Guard have one respectable-ish turn of shooting, unless you're Armor of Contempt, in which case they have 0 respectable turns of shooting. And then they get touched. And as soon as they get touched, A, all their infantry dies on the spot super fast. Yeah. And B, as soon as you touch a tank, it turns off. It can no longer shoot. It doesn't fight. Guard have no way to dig you out. Game ends. It's brutal. Once you get into combat with Guard, the game is over. I don't care if you're Tau. If you're Tau, you touch them, their shooting turns off. You can fall back and shoot. So you're just going to fall back and shoot and charge and fall back and shoot and charge all game. So you will run at Guard. Because as soon as you touch them, they don't do anything, ever. Even if you don't kill them in combat.
Yep. They just cannot survive on objectives. Whatever's out there is at risk of being trapped. And then you don't do anything, and your opponent just walks into your deployment zone. It's such a hard army to play, because it has no tools whatsoever.
Yeah. It really doesn't. I built a list with John in a Guard clinic. And I was like, oh, this actually is like pretty good. It could be pretty good. And then John just ran me through like the damage that you would do against even a basic army. And I was like, oh God, you don't do anything.
They need a codex. That is just that simple. Both of these armies need a codex.
Yeah, badly.
All right. Chaos Space Marines. Army that also needs a codex.
I wish I was Mark, because I don't know what the army really does.
It's hilarious, because this first weekend of the Balanced Data Slate, we actually saw Chaos Space Marines do quite well.
I think they can.
There were several Disco Lord builds, which are pretty. They do benefit from Armor of Contempt. They love that.
A lot, yeah.
So
that'd be the Lord Discordants.
Yeah, exactly. The Lord Discordants, which are a strong HQ choice, can be move blocked by top armies, but against armies that don't have cheap screening tools, it's just into you and out. Now it has exploding or Death to the False Emperor against every type of unit.
Damage output is not CSM's problem. Durability was, guess what? Armor of Contempt on cheap bodies. So I don't know all the combos that I can get. As I said, I'm not Mark. Mark would have them all in a little encyclopedia in the back of his head. There's got to be something in there that's good. There has to be.
He was talking about not Mutalith Vortex Beasts, the Mutilators and Obliterators.
Sure, eventually.
The other 2-up armor stuff.
And also indirect. So indirect punished CSM because they were 1 wound Marines. Indirect punished them, and the fact that they just had a 3-up punished them. And both of those got better. Like, their durability went up. Their damage output, never the problem. They will kill anything they want on the charge. That's not the question. And in this meta, getting durability to match with that, massive. Indirect going away, massive. They can't beat Craft Worlds, unfortunately, at all.
But some armies just can't, and that's why they're broken.
Craft Worlds have the speed, mobility, and a lot of anti-combat tricks that, unfortunately, CSM is just out of luck in that one. But into a lot of other armies, they have it, I think.
They have an enormous toolkit, and armies like Emperor's Children have very good stratagems. In particular, the what is it? The one where you get an auto 6 on your charge dice.
Yeah, the Emperor's Children one.
Yeah. I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's just a super great strat. You roll 2 dice on your
it's
charge
like
roll.
Honor the something.
Honor the Prince.
Honor the Prince.
And you just that's a 6. I'm in.
Yep.
Great strat.
Super strong.
They have a lot of volume of fire. They have good melee units that hit exceptionally hard because of the buffs you can stack on them with prescience and the exploding attacks.
Yep.
So
they got a boost in a lot the same way the Sisters did. 1 wound models with Armor of Contempt is where you want to be. Because the things that cut through your armor tend to do multiple damage, which means the 2 and 3 wounds on Space Marines is not the best place to have Armor of Contempt. And 1 wound cheap models, where the stuff that you would normally use to kill 1 wound cheap models doesn't work anymore, is going to be really hard to deal with.
And on top of that, they have such a vast array of data sheets that there are bound to be things that, dramatically improve from this. Like somebody was mentioning, there's a Lord of Skulls list that went 4-1. Just Lord of Skulls with Armor of Contempt.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they have moved up.
Is it Heretic Astartes?
Lord of Skulls, I believe so.
Yeah.
I think everything in there is Heretic Astartes now.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as I said, I would really love to just phone a friend and call Mark right now and just be like, yo, what do you think? That would take 2 hours because there's so much to this faction. And Mark knows all of it somehow. But I think there are a lot of untapped builds and they're ready to go. We're not the people to explore them, but there are builds in there. There just are. So I would put them in B tier. B tier is going to be very full. Same thing with A tier. C tier is going to be a little less full. They did a good job balancing a lot of armies against each other. They really did. There's going to be a lot of A and B. Good job. Good job, G-Dubs.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is the fact that Chaos Space Marines actually have tools to initiate things, and they don't mind allying in with demons to get their particular handful of things that are actually useful, because they don't lose anything.
Yeah,
whereas Death Guard do.
Yeah, along with, say, profiles that can make use of the things demons do, unlike demons. Yeah. Demons don't have good units to take advantage of, like, the Epitome or things like that, where Space Marines are like, oh, you can't fall back from combat. Interesting. Yeah. You're dead.
All right. Imperial Knights, they're getting a codex in the near future, so this can very likely change soon. But for now, how do you feel about Knights? They did, in the balanced data slate, they had taken the Knight thing away, but they added it back the following week. So that the baby Knights still get OBSEC, and the big Knights count as extra models.
I did not realize that.
They did add that back in there.
I think Knights are not, for some reason, the Megara got a points increase. That
deserved it.
Sure, but like...
It's just dramatically better than all the other Knights.
Yeah, I think it's a B tier army, honestly. I wouldn't spend too much time on it because they're getting a new book soon and who knows what's in that. But they are OBSEC. I think they're better than Custodes. They have decent matchups into some of the top armies. Decent, not amazing, decent. Megaras are still a force, even if they're a force at 20 more points. I think they're a good army. I mean, I'm looking forward to see what Brian Jones does with them. He's been doing some good work with the Imperial Knights. I really am looking forward to seeing what he does with the new book. But as of now, they're a fine army. You can still rush people down and absolutely clown stomp them. But, I mean, they just get shot sometimes. Long range shooting is on the wane, though. It's waning, which is a decent place to be if you are...
Yeah, it's mid-range shooting and then just a lot of mortals.
Yep, absolutely.
But still, Knights need to put something towards the center and then it just instantly evaporates.
Yeah, I think it's you overwhelm people with Megaras and nonsense like that.
I hope it works.
It can. It doesn't have to, though.
$5 super chat from Micah. Hey guys, asked when the sheet dropped, but are Thousand Sons or Sisters the bigger winners? And given the choice, which would you focus on getting reps?
It's close.
Yeah.
But I think it's Sisters.
I think it's Sisters, but it definitely is close. We'll see when we get to Thousand Sons, which is towards the end. But they're both dramatically improved.
Sisters, I think, got the biggest benefit because they both got a lot of durability out of it. But Sisters carve through other Armor of Contempt armies, so it isn't a negative at all on them. A lot of Marines, it's a positive and a negative because they're bad at killing other Armor of Contempt armies, but they got a durability increase. Sisters are like, yeah, I'll take the durability, but I'm all AP4, bye-bye. And that definitely helps.
Yeah. Thousand Sons are hurt by Armor of Contempt in that their shooting does less, and they are honestly a psychic and shooting army. Their melee isn't that great.
It's not that great. Sisters should annihilate Thousand Sons.
Yeah.
Repentia by themselves are like, everything I touch is gone, and it's fine.
Okay, we got next set, the Aggressive Marines.
Yes, the Melee Marines. I do think Melee Marines are actually in a really good place right now internally. For the internal Space Marine metagame, they can they can avoid the shooting that can actually punch through Armor of Contempt. Eradicators are super easy to avoid. Hellblasters are super easy to avoid. Inceptors are harder to avoid, but closer range. So I'm not as worried about that. So in the internal Space Marine metagame, I've thought about this a bit, if you can't tell.
Oh, yeah.
In the internal Space Marine metagame, I think Melee Marines are king. Here's the thing. Space Wolves and White Scars have serious problems into Salamanders specifically. Or Deathwatch, because Deathwatch can just be Salamanders for the turns that it matters.
Yeah. You got Advance in Charge coming at me?
Yep.
Nah.
No.
Here we go. Turn off those Lightning Claws.
All the Lightning Claws will stop working. Now, is possible you can go into builds with Thunder Hammers. That's not the current builds. Current builds rely a lot on Lightning Claws. The grindy builds definitely rely a lot on Lightning Claws, so that's, again, a Salamander's thing. I think, also, all the fast elements of Space Wolves and White Scars, you can tell what I'm setting up right now. The fast elements out of Space Wolves and White Scars tended to rely on Storm Shields to get their durability. So you drop the Storm Shields for, in my opinion, Lightning Claw and Chainsword. You get the extra Chainsword attack, whatever, but you are 5 points per model cheaper and roughly the same durability. A little less because you don't have the invuln, but for 5 points less per model, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that's bad. Armor of Contempt does not stack with Storm Shields, so that is a change that those armies will make. Now, here's the thing. Blood Angels units did not take Storm Shields. And Sanguinary Guard had a 2-up already. Sanguinary Guard got a massive benefit out of Armor of Contempt. And in the same way as Sisters, they got a massive benefit, but also they don't care about Armor of Contempt. Blood Angels, I think, are the single biggest bully in the internal Space Marine metagame. I think they run over other Marines because they annihilate everything they touch in combat. I don't care if you have Armor of Contempt or not. You're dead. And so that means in the internal metagame where they can avoid the shooting that will kill them, they have a 2-up with +1 to their save, especially in cover, so whatever will find you, whatever gets around the edges, whatever gets around the outskirts, probably has a hard time actually applying damage to you. Then in response, everything Blood Angels touches dies horribly. And they will murder Salamanders wholesale. I don't reroll wounds. Guess what? I'm strength 5, AP4, 2 damage with +1 to wound. And 5 attacks a model. Don't care. Dead. So I think Blood Angels are the third biggest recipient of Armor of Contempt, if we're really ranking down that far. Because again, they benefit from it significantly, but punch through it themselves. And that's a great place to be. So I think Blood Angels stepped up. White Scars was clearly the best Marine combat army before.
Yeah, Advanced Charge is just an amazing role.
I thought Blood Angels were better than people were giving it credit for, but Space Wolves and White Scars were just better. And Blood Angels and Space Wolves were roughly similar in terms of power level. Now I don't think that's the case. I think White Scars and Blood Angels are now roughly similar. I think they are now roughly similar. Space Wolves have dropped off. I think into other Marines, Blood Angels are better than White Scars, and I don't think that's super close. But into the metagame as a whole, I think White Scars' speed definitely helps them. So I would say Blood Angels and White Scars are about the same in terms of power level. Space Wolves have dropped off. They did not get a buff from Armor of Contempt. The most I can say is the Dreadnought build with the aura of light cover is now more durable than before. That's good.
Yeah, the Wolfguard Terminators are very good.
Wolfguard Terminators are very good, but imagine a Terminator that moves 14 inches and charges you with 5 attacks apiece. Because it's a 2-up armor save. 2-up armor save in cover with Armor of Contempt, brutally durable. And Blood Angels get ones that can move very fast, control a large section of the board. I do think Blood Angels will still get tabled if they just run straight at their opponent, as they always did.
Yeah. They still don't have better ways to clear cheap screens.
Yeah, largely.
Behind terrain.
Largely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that approach will get you murdered still. But if you post up in the center of the board behind terrain on objectives, no army can dig you out. Well, with one exception. I do think they have I think all Marines have a problem in the Craft Worlds. Blood Angels have one too. It's real bad. Craft Worlds will find the angles and they will shoot you with Ignores Cover AP4.
Yep. Masses
of it. So, unfortunately, that is a problem for Blood Angels. It's the reason I'm not playing them to Dallas, because I don't want to run into Nick and
get tabled.
It would be bad. But into almost everything else, Blood Angels are very good. I mean, you basically have to remove the top, let's say 2 armies from the metagame, and the metagame is super healthy, and Blood Angels can do very, very well. As it is, with the top 2 armies out there, I think none of the fast Marine armies do great. None of the Marine armies do great. None of the armies do great if you factor in the top 2 armies.
Yep.
So if we're ignoring that, I think Blood Angels and White Scars go to A and Space Wolves go to B.
All right. Where would you put, so let's take White Scars. Where would you put them?
I think they're better than the durable grindy builds. Because they're faster, man. They're just faster.
You think they're better than Deathwatch? They don't hit that hard. They hit hard, but they hit hard really hard at the beginning of the edition, and they haven't increased in damage.
It's true.
Whereas the game around them has.
That's true. I haven't played Deathwatch enough, so you're gonna have to take this with a grain of salt. I think White Scars. You know what? I'm just gonna say they're close enough that we can put them in whatever order.
I think
I haven't played Deathwatch enough.
We can sit it there.
Space Wolves, I'm pretty sure, are just lower than Salamanders and Black Templars.
Really?
They didn't get anything out of this update.
Really?
Yeah.
I think they're better than both of these.
Okay. I do think it's close.
I think the 6-inch heroic, because they can have a actual durable unit in the middle with that Wolfguard unit, with the 6-inch heroics and the Fight Last abilities, they can actually create a really annoying situation, kind of like Custodes used to on the center objective.
Okay, I could see that.
And they still have extremely hard-hitting units.
That's more than Salamanders or Black Templars.
They also didn't like to take too many Storm Shields because they wanted to do the extra damage with the exploding attacks. I think taking off the Storm Shields and adding just all the weapons does help their damage output too, because they do out an outrageous amount of damage.
I could see that. Okay.
Turning off rerolls, whatever. I'm going to just hit you with so many attacks that it literally doesn't matter.
That's true. They're limited to 3 5-man fast units, which is kind of a problem. That is a problem Space Wolves have. They have 3 units that are fast, and that is it. That's as many as they can get.
I think their shooting castle is actually quite a bit better than what these guys can bring.
All right, I can buy that for sure. I think Blood Angels, you're mentioning White Scars damage has not increased. Blood Angels damage is still premium.
It's still good.
They still hit hard enough to eliminate anything.
I definitely agree that they play super well into these armies, because these armies, Marines don't have screens, really. Like screens that are going to block off a Blood Angel charge. The armies up here do.
Well, what I found is if my opponent just tries to screen me, I will sacrifice a unit a turn to take an objective, and I have 6 units. There are 5 turns to this game. So I will just sacrifice, and then by the end of the game, I'm like, oh no, do I have nothing left in all the points? Yay! I mean, I think they're all super close. Blood Angels don't have a damage problem. White Scars kind of can. They can. They can. Blood Angels are also max damage from turn 1, because they have 3 ways to put units in Assault Doctrine, whereas White Scars just have the 1. So if you pressure a White Scar army early, its damage is bad. If you pressure a Blood Angel army early, its damage is negligibly less damaging than in Assault Doctrine, because you have the Sanguinary Priest going once, Strat going twice, 2 units in Assault Doctrine, and 2 CP, you can make a 3rd unit. So I do think Blood Angels are actually very well positioned. Where would you put them between Dark Angels, Deathwatch, White Scars?
It's tough, because the Terminator break, it doesn't matter. It's awesome you have defense, it is dead. 100%. And they have the great trick with the stratagem to send a character in, and then it's like, cool, it doesn't matter, interrupt, I'm going to kill both these squads.
Yeah, Angel Sacrifice is gross.
So
I do think into those three, if we're just talking how do they pair into those three, Blood Angels are at the top.
yeah, I think they are going to struggle more against the top armies because they have one play style that works. They don't have a durable, I sit on the center.
And they sit on the center behind terrain.
They need good terrain.
They need
more
good
so
terrain.
than both of those factions, and I think that you can't guarantee that you're going to get amazing terrain. You're going to Dallas, and there are a couple tables that aren't particularly amazing.
They aren't the best.
And if you bring Blood Angels in that case, you're just hoping that you get one of those better tables, whereas I think these two have much more play.
They do. But to be fair, I don't think any of these armies really beat Craft Worlds or the other S tier army that we're going to put up there.
I think that's totally fair. I still think that they have a couple units. The whole army bases around, if you misplay with any of those units, you're going to suffer in a big way.
I agree. But we are rating this played to the best of the abilities, right? I could really see it put anywhere between there, above Deathwatch, or above Dark Angel. I could see it in any three spot.
I think I would put them here, being conservatively, until we see more of it.
Yeah.
Because I think these two just have a diverse set of playstyles that could help them more.
Absolutely.
They also have an outstanding secondary game, which I like.
I am totally fine putting Blood Angels there. I think anywhere that they put below White Scars, below Deathwatch, below Dark Angels, or above all three, I think it's totally fine to put them there.
Yeah.
They're all really close.
And like I said, A tier, B tier, these armies can play into these armies. Yep. These armies can lose to these armies. It doesn't mean that they're better in every circumstance. Like, I would be very confident with my AdMech against most of these armies.
Yep.
Being able to initiate against them.
Absolutely.
But I think on average, it'll be tougher simply because they got better rules. All right. So, all right. We'll go on to the Necrons here.
Yep. Necrons, would you like to just get it out of your system?
Yep. They are going to sit in this area around here. I think, honestly, they have a terrible matchup into Knights, but specifically, the Armor of Contempt change is massive because Necrons are a medium AP army for the most part, and they are going to struggle massively into some of these Marine armies. You have to basically go Novak now. The Obsec Dynasty is dead, in my opinion. I already thought it was less effective than Novak. Now I think it's completely dead.
I'm shocked you're not putting this in C tier. I agree that it's in B tier.
I think they're actually better than both of these.
I do think they're better than those.
So if we drop them to C tier, then, which I don't think honestly, we should, because I think they have play up here. Like Necrons do have play up here. I beat Drukhari.
If there's 10 A tier armies and 10 B tier armies, that's just a good thing. That's like a good statement about the metagame.
Yeah, it was only a couple weeks ago I beat Drukhari with Necrons, and that wasn't even my best build because I didn't run as many warriors as I wanted to. So they definitely have play into there. I still think it's hard, and
there's some armies they just beat the hell out of.
They can just bounce. That's the problem. Is if people are going for more durability and more anti-tank weapons, Necrons hate that.
Yeah. I think Necrons are great, and I honestly think where the tier list is right now is a great statement for how the metagame is doing.
Yeah, they definitely need They need very careful points decreases to some of their key characters.
I think if we see,
they're overcosted.
We'll talk about how we feel the metagame is doing at the end of it. But there's a lot to be happy about.
Hey, Endymion, can you describe...
Endymion, I got it right the first time I tried it, and he congratulated me.
Can you describe a bit more of the build and playstyle of the Spacewolf Shooting Dread Castle? So, not in this particular video, however, just the broad strokes of it is a very buffed up defensive Dreadnought Castle in the center of the table, Redemptors, Contemptors, whatever you want, that are -1 to hit, count as in cover, Armor of Contempt.
Super hard to shift them.
And they just keep shooting turn after turn.
Dreads have a problem where they're just not dynamic enough, but as far as a Dread build goes, that's one of the better ones.
Mr. Orks here.
Orks, they certainly have quite a few problems, but
they hate Armor of Contempt.
They hate it so bad. They already had problems killing Marines, if you weren't Goths Orks, and now they might have problems killing Marines even if they are Goths Orks, and it's kind of a rough place to be.
Yep. Frankly, the times that we put them on recently, they struggled against pretty much all these factions.
To be fair, Custodes that we put them on against are now a shell of their former selves, but
I still think they bounce off Custodes.
I think they probably do. Yeah. They don't have any rerolls in their army, so that doesn't matter.
The strats weren't the key part. It's just their basic data sheets don't do enough.
Yeah, all right, I'm on board. Yeah,
I think they're down here. They're better than Chaos Space Marines. They have some tools that are very good. Their shooting heavy builds still do a lot of damage.
Yeah,
because they can stack quite a bit of AP, but their combat just isn't what Orcs should be, even when you're running the Goths build.
Yeah, they do kind of bounce.
Mark charged into my Rustalkers and killed like 3, and then I just killed the entire unit in return with Mega Knobs. Like, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So, I don't respect Orcs whatsoever as an army. They had Squig Buggies, and I respected that because it would table me. But outside of that, I just haven't been impressed by Orc builds, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I have a low opinion of them. I played a lot of... Every tournament, I play like 3 Orc players. And I'm just like, you're getting tabled, you're getting tabled, you're getting tabled.
I agree, and they bounce now. Like,
they just bounce against a
before.
lot of the mid-tier armies now.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Tau. They got the lightest nerf out of the top tier armies.
Besides Craft Worlds.
Well, I'm sorry, did Craft Worlds get a nerf?
They didn't.
They didn't.
But out of the armies that should have got a nerf, the Tau got the lightest one. Tau got hit harder by the game-wide changes. Yeah. So bodyguard change and indirect change, massive for Tau. Both.
Indirect is actually startlingly huge.
It's huge. We put it on the table a couple times. Tau are a different army now on heavy terrain. On lighter terrain, they still can be oppressive with their shooting.
Force, yeah.
But on heavy terrain, you have to get so close to the center of the board, and armies are getting like the highest AP hardest hitting combat units now, and tons of mortals. You just can't be that close to opponents now.
Yeah, I think they're definitely A tier. I think they're definitely better than those Marine builds. But I think they have fallen off quite significantly, especially into
they're
Marines.
Definitely not S tier.
No way. I could see them being above Drukhari.
Yeah, I think they're better than Drukhari.
Yeah, I think they're there. They're still a great army.
Harlequins, they can play into all these armies. I think these armies are going to play. The problem with Tau is you need specific tools that actually interact on your opponent's half of the board, because now you don't just pick up those cheap units, so they have to leave either important stuff or they leave the objective. That doesn't work anymore. They just have stuff on their home objectives, which means either you're sending stuff that is designed to contest it, which I think Sasei is best, or you're just accepting that I'm going to try and table them. And I don't think that works as well anymore.
No, if they dig in, you can't just pick away at them with indirect, because indirect will
just hard to get around terrain. So
I mean, if you want a hard tailor for elves and make them cry, then you can take an indirect build, and you will lose to other stuff, but you will earn my respect when you play into a Craft World player and just make them weep bitter tears.
We've got a 5 Canadian super chat from Snowman. Thanks so much. Necrons Novak builds 20-man warriors worth it now. I would still run them because they are the best mission playing tool Necrons have.
Yeah.
You've seen that every single game. Probably would not go more than 40. Maybe you just go to 20 and just get more melee tools now. Yeah. But that's kind of where I'm at.
There's still a check on your opponent of like, if you can't deal with 20 warriors, you are just losing this game.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the super chat. We got the GSC here. They love that indirect isn't going to be in the game very often.
They got tabled.
They also don't like Armor of Contempt.
They do bounce off Marines. Bad.
So
real bad.
It's another army where I just think they struggle against some of the top armies.
They struggle into durability, and they struggle into fast shooting.
Fast shooting with good screening.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, they're probably right here, because they do have some very good mission playing tools, and they have some reasonable units. I think they can initiate against a lot of these armies, because Marines just don't have very good screens. The slow Marines.
They really don't.
And
Landspeeder Storms are good, but like
you're running a lot of Landspeeder Storms, but they still have. They can play into these armies, but it is just hard.
It is difficult. They have very polarized match. Well, not even really polarized matchups. It's just as you get better and better, you're either relying on speed and shooting or durability. And at some point, the durability just makes Genestealer Cults stop working, and the speed and shooting just tables them. So at a certain point, they just can't pass the checks anymore, and they lose. That is a problem for them. Into B tier armies, I think they're amazing.
Yeah.
But into A and S tier armies, I think they struggle significantly. In fact, I would probably put them below that brick of Marines, just because those brick of Marines can play a lot better into the top tier armies than GSC can.
Chaos Knights, kind of the same thing as Knights. They're about to get a Codex.
They are definitely worse than Knights.
They're around here.
They're about to get a Codex. They are... you can spam out Armigers, I guess. Yeah, it's fine.
You spam out the Armigers, you do a ton of damage, but they struggle against the top armies because they don't have a lot of tools. But they're about to get a Codex, so don't want to spend too much time on them. Then we've got the kind of average Space Marine armies. So let's start with Imperial Fist, because that's easy. They ignore cover, and that's still the only good thing that they do. Worse than Death Guard, in my opinion.
I would say so, yeah. They just have generic Marine stuff, and that's not good enough.
Yeah, and the generic Marine... Death Guard are better than generic Marines.
Yes, generic for whatever that's worth.
Yep. Iron Hands are very good.
I'd say Iron Hands are an A tier.
They are one of the better. If you want to build just shooting, they do it extremely well, and they have that extra defense on top of it because they can pop that 5 of Feel No Pain on a unit. So where you put them up here, I think their lack of speed still hurts them, but they have very good tools still, hilariously.
Yes.
Ultramarines, this is the list that we saw Ultramarines do well with. They have one of the worst win rates in the game because new player starts with Ultramarines doesn't do well.
Every new player is like,
but
ooh.
Their problem is, if you look at the list John designed for Ultramarines, massive amount of AP1 and AP2.
It was super designed to just kill Drukhari.
Yep.
And that is not the profiles anymore.
Oh my god, it's so bad.
Yeah.
They're around here.
They're falling off pretty hard. I think they're better than Orks because lol Orks.
Yeah.
But
and then Raven Guard.
So
Lookout Sir going, a bodyguard going to Lookout Sir helps them.
Yep. I still think they're low on the totem pole. They don't do a lot of good stuff. They do a lot of weird stuff. That's probably not going to cut it. They're not that much. They don't have that much more going for them than Imperial Fists. They are generic Marines at the end of the day.
You want to put them down here?
No. Certainly, I liked where they were.
Yeah.
They're fine. They do tend to also rely on a lot of AP1 and AP2, which bad news, Chief. The Army of Renown for them is super adorable, super fun. Not that great.
What we should do for chat is just pit Death Guard against everything above them and see what wins.
Yeah.
Just go.
They need to earn their way into B tier.
If they earn their way into B tier, they earned it. And Nick will love playing more Death Guard games. Chat, make it happen. All right, Thousand Suns dramatically improved. Armor of Contempt on Scarab Occult Terminators who get +1 save against damage 1 is just obscene.
It also means that against the regular Rubric Marines, also super durable. They still have very cheap screening units. Spawner are decent options to just soak things. They've got great mortal output. They can do the teleporting shenanigans with Duplicity. I think they are in this area up here. You think they're that high, really?
Yeah.
I think they're worse than Tau.
They might be worse than
They're
Tau.
definitely A tier. They do a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, I could see putting them around there.
A lot of their combat is going to bounce now into Thousand Suns, which wasn't the case before.
No, Thousand Suns don't do anything. I think that's a good place for a Thousand Suns right there.
They are so vastly improved. We haven't put it on the stream yet because we don't have 30 Scarab Occult Terminators, but man, that list is a bear to deal with.
It really is. Now, in other Armor of Contempt armies, balance a little bit. AP2 bolters don't really do anything. So you are relying on your combat, which is very bad, and you're relying on your... I mean, it's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah.
But you are hilariously vulnerable in combat to other armies. And you're relying on your psychic powers, which is very good, but I do think they do have an Armor of Contempt problem. But
the
on the
other
other
armies
hand,
shooting into them have a problem killing Thousand Suns.
They really do.
Because Thousand Suns have multiple ways to bring models back as well.
Yes, to a turn.
Yep.
I think Thousand Suns are great. I think they are not an army without flaws, but they are great.
Yeah. We got Jonas with a super chat with many armies going through elite. Do you think that a meta pick could be Be'lakor with hordes? We talked about that earlier a bit. The hordes just don't do anything.
Yeah, they don't. You can't in this
die.
meta, you can't just let your opponent wail on you for turn after turn after turn without doing something about it. If you do, it doesn't matter how hordy you are or whatever. With Be'lakor, you're gonna die fast too.
Here we go. Tyranids. All right.
The elephant in the room.
Jack, this army does everything and more. If you thought there were broken rules in some of these previous codexes, this is the best codex that's been released thus far.
It is better than Harlequins.
Better
when
than
Harlequins came out.
Yep, which I think was the best up to that point.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I mean, it is. We've been referencing it a million times by just saying, "Oh, the top 2 armies," or "the best army in the game," or some army that we'll talk about later in the list. Nids are insane. They're absurd.
They not only is it the psychic phase and the Maliceptor action.
Yeah, drop 30 mortal wounds on you.
On top of that, every strat and the Hive Tyrant thing, they can pump out 30 mortals easily in a turn. Easily, without even going crazy on it.
Yeah.
And very few armies can take that.
And they cast every single power in their army.
Almost every single monster is T8 now with, sometimes they're 2-up armor. They're extremely difficult to deal with. They can get invulnerable saves. They can get transhuman.
-1 strength on incoming weapons on toughness 8 targets is actually something the game was not meant to handle.
Nope.
In addition, every single data sheet in the book, with like 5 exceptions, is undercosted by a significant amount.
Yep.
Why are Pyrovores 30 points for what they do? Why are Raveners 30 points for what they are? Why is a Maleceptor? Why are there like 10 monsters in the book that are toughness 8 with like 15 to 17 wounds, and none of them are over 200 points, except for the Turvagon that comes with a free 70-point unit or 80-point unit inside of it.
And can revive 10 models.
A turn. How come none of those models are over 200 points, Siegs? And a lot of them are 170.
We played Tyranids a few times. One of the biggest problems with them is they have more things than you, right?
Yes.
This is the problem we see with undercosted top-tier armies. But on top of that, they also have the ability to 1 CP and Circle the Prey, just go back into reserve. So even though they have more stuff and could afford to trade with you, Jack, they don't trade with you.
Yeah.
They just go back into reserve.
They could beat you trading units. But on top of being able to beat you with MSU trading units, they don't have to trade.
The army is beyond broken. It is the silliest codex to come out thus far. It is stronger than Craft Worlds.
If we had another tier, we would put NIDS in it.
Both these armies need nerfs. Craft Worlds need a couple targeted ones.
Can you just hover that where it should be? Yep, right there.
It defines S tier.
Yeah, it's...
No, careful. Let's go back.
NIDS is insanely broken on so many metrics.
It's funny because if you just pick a couple things, they have a list of 10, 12 more things that are just also silly. Like the Turvagon, nobody's even playing that thing. That thing is absurd. You thought Necron Warriors were powerful? This thing is silly.
Yeah, they're going to be playing whack-a-mole with this codex for a while. Because you're going to nerf the Maleceptor, you're going to increase some points on whatever the best army is, and then it's going to sprout another head like a Hydra, and it's going to just have another broken army come out. Because the data sheets are cranked across the board and are insanely undercosted. Like, why is a Walkrent that is toughness 8 with 12 wounds, a 2-up, 4-up, and hits like a Mack truck and has a Ravager for shooting, 175? What is that? And you don't even take it.
There are Necron characters that are almost 175.
Yeah.
That do nothing. It's
Trajan is broken at 160, and the Walkrent makes him look like he's nothing for 15 more points. And you also can't shoot them, so there's some broken rules interactions in there, too.
Yeah, Tyrant Guard is still... They've had to do that.
They had to.
I would just give Tyrant Guard something entirely different instead of untargetable things.
Yeah, because, so they reduced it from actual bodyguard to Lookout Sir for a monster, which is a decision that they made. It's not what I would have made.
Just make them take the wounds. They pass over the wounds. The wounds done to the higher turn go to them until they're dead. Because
what happens is you have a bunch of stuff behind a wall. You have the bodyguard behind a wall. And then you have the Walkrent just in the open. And you can't shoot it because it's not the closest. And if it's a Walkrent, it shoots you from there and it punches you from there. If it's a Flyrant, it gets way more busted because it just goes super far into you, kills whatever it touches, and then goes into reserves.
Yeah, John took a super tame Tyranid list and just ran my Necrons over without any effort whatsoever.
Yep.
And that wasn't even close to the list that he's going to be running at tournaments. So, this codex is just silly. And then the secondary game, going back to Brandon's question earlier, they have amazing secondaries. They can do Stranglehold or Engage super easily. Stranglehold.
Blast.
Because in Circle of the Prey happens end of turn, so you score, and then you're like, hey, strat, resolve, done.
Yep.
So...
They're the best at sitting back and holding objectives.
Raise
They're
the
best at
banners
running
is
forward
perfect.
and taking them away from you. They also have the I win button that Drukhari had where they can just jam all their stuff in the center and you're like, I can't deal with it because it all costs 30% less than it should.
Yeah, their psychic secondaries are automatic if they want to do them. That is super good. Because they can go into the middle with a caster and be like, cast 1 CP, end of turn, just back in reserve. They'll come down the next turn, do a different character.
Yep. They'll cycle units into you with Encircle the Prey. They'll run a 5-man Ravener in, hit super hard, pick something up, go into reserves. Following turn, it's the Flyrant. He goes into reserves. Following turn, it's another Ravener squad. They go into reserves. And every time they just come back down, hit you the following turn, go back up.
If any strat should be worth 3 CP, it's that one.
Yeah, it's gross. And we saw it. We recorded a game between you and John. We're going to show later in the week. But... we got to turn 2 or 3 and you had lost a bunch of units and we were scoring the mission secondary, which is kill points. We were like, Oh,
I can't
Zeke
get kill
hasn't
points.
killed anything.
Because I can't.
You can't. John was even playing it like you can only do it once a turn, which, by the way, rules is written, you can do it more than once a turn. But even if he does it once a turn, he's going in, he's scooping something real, and then you're not killing anything back, ever. It's
not good.
They're going to be, this is the Drukhari where they're going to be hammering on this codex for another 6 months.
Yep. Got to find out a super chat from Dashiel. Thoughts on the tools that Necrons have against the Harpy? Seems like the Codex doesn't have anything that can efficiently trade with it. When it has the Invuln, no. But the Silent King with auto-wounding Mynir and rerolls, that's their best tool for it.
For sure.
That and Locust Heavy Destroyers if you want to run them. But it's swingy.
You can probably also rip it out of the sky with reroll to hit Gauss Reapers.
If you get in range, though, because those fly in their deployment zone.
They will. They'll fly back and forth and just shoot you.
So it's tough. Necrons don't deal with long-range firepower that well, but the Silent King and Locust Heavy Destroyers are the two I would run if you want to deal with that.
Yeah. So I think this is the point where we just where we should wrap up and describe how we think the metagame is doing.
Yeah.
So I think if you bring Craft Worlds and NIDS down to A tier, right? If you do something about those, if for whatever reason they are not a problem, the metagame is in the best spot I've ever seen it. You can run your favorite army, whatever really, like you love the fluff, you love how it plays, you can run your favorite army, unless it's Death Guard, and you can do really well with it at big events like GTs.
Yep.
Unless you're Imperial Fist, Death Guard, Demons, or Guard, you can play your favorite army and do well with it.
And even those armies, you can play Death Guard and still do relatively well at a tournament. If you expect to win a super major, I will highly doubt it.
Yeah.
I'll be super impressed. Next person to win Death Guard with a super major, hats off. Please message me and I will give you public credit.
Tyranids and Eldar are kind of a cancer on the metagame because you have to plan for both of them. They have very different ways of keeping themselves alive, and at the same time you have to deal with Armor of Contempt. It is a problem. But once those two are evened out, the metagame is super good. You can win a GT with half of the armies in existence, I think. And that is not a thing you could see before.
Yeah.
Or really at any point in 40K's time.
Yeah, it's very close. Chapter proved. There's a lot of emphasis on this. It needs to be perfect. They need to fine-tune, bring these armies up, and then bring these armies down proper, and then pick a couple units in here that are overperforming, buff up the underperforming ones. The meta will be in a great spot.
I think I think all they need to do
focus on chapter approved. Get this one right, guys.
Is the S tier. I think they did a great job with the balanced data slate.
Yep.
But those two S tier armies need to get hit before the meta can be what it could be.
Yep. So last super chat here. What tools do sisters have into NIDS? They just have the ability to send Repentia out of a Rhino across and match the speed of Tyranids.
Yep.
That is their one advantage, and they have a lot of resources.
And their damage profiles match up super well into
we'll probably
into
get that
NIDS.
matchup on eventually.
It'd be interesting, yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the tier list. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. I'm sure there's a lot of disagreement. Obviously, we've seen the Death Guard comments. But once again, this is about what we think if the top players ran just these armies, what kind of where they'd be ranked. And hopefully you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Give us a like. Tell your friends. We've been growing a lot. Thanks to everybody's support. And we're going to keep putting out content like this and show off a lot of these armies. Maybe we'll even get Death Guard back on for another run.
Well, we'll see. Maybe they can earn their way up.
Thanks so much, Hootie, for joining us as a member and continuing for another 6 months. If you want to join us, we got various membership tiers. We got the base membership. You get in our Discord where we have an awesome international community that's constantly talking competitive 40K, and you also get access to our weekly war room strategy sessions. And then we have the full war room on here. So if you want all the extra battle reports that we do, which is just high-level tournament prep games and coaching games teaching you how to play these armies at the highest level, then come on and join us in the war room. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. We got a war room game coming up. It is Jack playing his Deathwatch. So if you want to see that Army of Renown, that's where it's going to be.
I'm figuring it out in real time. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so I can't wait for that. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.